Let me start with a simple scenario. Two pest control companies, both generate $10 million in top line revenue. Both have similar operating margins. Both have incredibly loyal customers. One sells to a strategic buyer for 8 times EBITDA. For clarification, this is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. The other struggles to get a 5 times multiple. Why? It's not the service quality, it's not the branding on the trucks, it's not even the sheer number of customers. It's where those customers are. What you're seeing in that massive valuation gap is not random. It is the density premium. Welcome back to Pest Control Unlocked. I'm your host, Konstantin Schwartz. Today, we're talking about the single most misunderstood metric in field services. First, we're going to look at how the obsession with top-line growth is quietly destroying your margins. Then we're going to expose exactly what massive M&A buyers are actually looking for when they evaluate your business. In this industry, we talk a lot about scale. We talk about revenue milestones, we talk about customer count, we talk about technician headcount. But we almost never talk about how that revenue is distributed geographically. And that is a massive problem. Because $1 million spread across 10 cities is fundamentally different from $1 million concentrated in one. On paper or your spreadsheet, they look absolutely identical. But operationally, they're not even close. Let's make this tangible. Think of two technicians. They have the exact same skill level. They get the exact same pay. They use the exact same chemicals and tools. Technician A operates in a highly dense urban route, spends 5 minutes driving between neighborhoods, and completes 18 to 20 stops per day. Technician B operates in a dispersed, sprawling territory and spends 25 minutes driving between farm to market roads and distant suburbs and only completes 10 to 12 stops per day. Same technician, same 8-hour day, completely different economics. And this is not a small issue. In field service businesses, it is not uncommon to see 30 to 40% of a technician's day lost to drive time in poorly structured routes. When a truck is doing 65 miles an hour down the highway, it is not a revenue-generating asset. It's a massive liability. You're burning fuel, you're accelerating the depreciation of the vehicle, and you're risking traffic accidents. And worst of all, you're burning out your technician. A tech who spends 4 hours a day staring at taillights is not going to have the energy to upsell a termite inspection when they finally get to the door. That windshield time is capacity you're paying for, but completely failing to monetize. So let's make the connection explicit. Density drives productivity. Productivity drives margin, which means density drives margin. Even small improvements matter. A reduction of just 10 to 15% in drive time can translate into massive margin expansion without you having to acquire a single new customer. This is not a minor operational detail for your dispatcher to worry about. It is a structural advantage that dictates the survival of your business. And here is an uncomfortable truth. A lot of operators are growing in ways that actually destroy the value of their company. How does this happen? It happens because of ego and the inability to say no. A lead comes in for $75 quarterly residential spray, but the house is 45 minutes outside of your core service zone. The operator, addicted to top-line revenue, says, "Sure, we can service that." Then they do it again and again. Suddenly, they're bragging on LinkedIn that they service a 5-county area across the entire metroplex. They're adding customers, but they are also increasing their dispersion. They are expanding their territory significantly faster than they are building density. On paper, it looks like incredible growth. The top-line revenue is going up. But underneath the hood, the economics are getting weaker every single day. The routing becomes a nightmare, the fuel costs skyrocket, and the profit margin becomes paper-thin. Now, let's look at this through the lens of mergers and acquisitions, because this is where the density premium becomes very, very real. In a US market with roughly 17,000 active independent pest control operators, fragmentation is incredibly high, which means consolidation is inevitable. But acquirers are not just buying revenue. They don't care about your logo. They are looking at route density, geographic concentration, and cluster strength. Let's go back to that 10 million company that sold for an 8 times multiple. Why did a massive player like Rentokil or Rollins pay a premium for them? Because of a concept called the tuck-in synergy. When an acquirer buys a highly dense cluster of customers, they can instantly drop those new customers onto their existing routes in that exact same zip code. They don't need your warehouse, they don't need your branch manager, they don't need your HR software. They strip all of that redundant overhead away, and that 10 million in revenue instantly becomes wildly profitable on their balance sheet. But if you built a dispersed, sprawling network across 5 counties, there's no synergy. The acquirer can't merge those routes efficiently. Their advantage isn't just the massive scale, it's their density. Thousands of technicians operating in tightly structured geographies. Acquirers don't buy customers, they buy clusters, and clusters command a premium. Think of it this way: a dense pest control business is like a well designed city. Everything is close, movement is highly efficient, information flows quickly. A sparse business is like a rural power grid: long distances, massive infrastructure costs, slower response times. You can have the same exact revenue in both models, but they yield completely different economics. And here's the key insight: the profit and loss statement doesn't show you this. The P&L will tell you that you made $1 million, but it won't tell you how hard your trucks had to work to get it. The P&L lies, but the map tells the truth. Now, let's take this one step further, looking toward the future of the industry. Density is not just about cost reduction, it's about total control and ultimately intelligence. When you operate in a highly concentrated geography, you collect more data per square mile. You can start to see pest activity patterns, seasonal trends, and localized risk signals before anyone else does. This is where the commercial side of the industry is already moving. Companies like Ecolab have built digital platforms generating roughly 400 million in annual revenue, growing at about 20% per year. That massive growth is being driven by connected systems, real-time monitoring, centralized data platforms, and a predictive intervention. And here's the critical link to density. These IoT systems become exponentially more valuable the more concentrated your network is. A single connected smart trap in isolation is useful, but a connected network of 500 smart traps in a dense 3-mile commercial geography, that is transformative. You effectively own the localized data for that micro market. So what does that actually mean in practice? What do you do on a Monday morning? It means operators need to fundamentally rethink growth. Stop asking, how do I get more customers? Start asking, where should I get them? Growth is not about volume, it's about concentration. The strongest operators build depth before breadth. They dominate micro markets. They expand in clusters, not randomly, strategically. If your map is currently a mess, you have 2 tools to fix it. First, route pruning. Look at the customers who are 45 minutes outside of your core zone. You either need to raise their prices so high that it justifies the windshield time, or you need to fire them or sell those accounts to a competitor who operates in that specific area. Second, anchor marketing. Stop buying broad Google ads that trigger across the entire county. Find your densest neighborhood, your anchor, and drop geofenced digital ads. Send direct mailers and knock on doors exclusively in a 2-mile radius around that anchor. If you take one thing away from this episode, let it be this: start measuring your business differently. Stop obsessing over just total revenue and total customers. Start tracking revenue per mile driven. Start tracking customers per square mile. Because those metrics reveal something your P&L constantly hides: how efficient your business really is. So let's bring this back to the core idea. The industry has spent decades optimizing for sheer unbridled growth. But the next phase of pest control won't be about how fast you grow. It'll be how intelligently you build your network. Because in the end, customers create revenue, but density creates profit. Revenue scales, but density compounds. And the companies that understand the math behind the map will be the ones that define the next generation of this industry. That's all for today. If this made you think differently about your business, or forced you to finally go look at your routing map, that's the point. I'm Konstantin Schwartz, and this is Pest Control Unlocked. Thank you for listening.